Dear Louis, I happen to agree with all you have shared about children sleeping in the same bed as their parents until they feel ready to leave the nest themselves and then sleep alone. My question is, how do couples who choose this model maintain their physical intimacy while giving up this much time and space for privacy? By adhering to that policy that you advocate of having the newborns in the bed with the parents. Great question. I'm so glad you asked that. And like, how could that not be in the minds of most parents? Okay, so bear in mind, first and foremost, excuse me, let me take a little sip here as I gather my thoughts. First and foremost, oh, a little fiber there. Piece of lint. Tickle me nose. Bear in mind, first and foremost, where there's a God's will, there's a way. In other words, God's will cannot ever contradict itself through two different sources. So if this divine model, and yes, I do teach that the best place for the infant is not in a little wooden box down at the end of the hall with a buzzer. That's child abuse. But it's not only in the room, but ideally in the bed. And if you're unwilling to have the child in the bed, at least have it next to the bed or very close to you. But never put your child down the hall in a little wooden box, little wooden prison with the grates in the walls. That's, oh my God. I'm almost like vomiting just thinking about it. Torture. So, I mean, that alone keeps psychologists in business. So, as those babies, tortured babies, grow up, wondering why their parents punished them and abandoned them after they yearned 9 months to bring them into the world, and they locked them in a wooden box down the hallway behind a closed door. Anyway, so how does the couple maintain intimacy with a baby in the bed? Good question. So you learn to work with it. You find your way. There are a couple of things. I mean, it's basically common sense. First of all, the baby is not always asleep and you're not always in the bed. So you have to just get a little bit creative. Remember, if you're putting the child first, when you put serving God first, it's top-down management. When God comes first, everything else works. If God comes down here, everything below that might work, but everything you shortchanged now doesn't work. So just put serving God. When I say serving God, it's serving the baby. Put the baby's needs first, and then everything else can work out very easily. It's where you yourself, where your consciousness fits in the continuum, the spectrum of selfishness to selflessness, that determines the success rate you have with your children. And most parents are way down here, in selfishness, but the more selfless they become, the more harmonious everything works. So put the baby's needs first. And what you're going to find out is there'll be times when, let's just say, I'll give you a couple examples. Maybe there'll be a time when your partner is home, and all of a sudden there's an afternoon free. No one's around. Baby's asleep. You move the baby, in the little sleeper side, and boom, there you go. Or maybe at nighttime. Sometimes a couple will just, you can have in the bed, there are these little dividers you do. A lot of people have fears about rolling over and suffocating their baby or killing it. That does happen. And if you're one of those people who's a mover and a shaker and you're nervous about it, they have these little dividers. So sometimes a couple will put the baby on the outside. Again, it's got a little wall so it won't roll off the bed, and then it's got the divider, and they can be intimate. Sometimes they'll even sleep like that. They'll have the baby in between them most of the time, and sometimes have the baby on the outside. The baby, even if it's asleep, it can feel you near it. Remember, it was in the womb for 9 months, so it has a type of sonar and radar, and it can feel the proximity to the parent. They're built that way. My daughter, when she was born, I delivered her at home with my wife, obviously, my then wife. She was delivered in our bedroom and delivered Lotus. So, and then she lived in our bedroom until she, chose to start venturing out. And that's another whole process, what that transition looks like. which I love helping people to do. It's very beautiful when you do it properly, and it's amazing to watch too. But she was in the room somewhere between, the transition started around 8, I think, or 9, and it was complete around 9 or 10, I think. But she would be asleep. We had a bed in the corner on the floor, and then there was the main bed. I don't want to get too complicated in my story, and there are some contingencies in there, but the point I was about to make is every time I would enter the room, whichever bed she was on, she would, even sound asleep, she would acknowledge my entering the room. She'd stir and make a sound and let me know that I was there. Even I could ask her questions and she'd be sound asleep, and she would answer them with body language or sighs or chortles or something. I could wake her up without touching her body or without raising my voice, just sending a tractor beam from my third eye. You know, like we have to go catch an airplane, and I would just send her a tractor beam silently. Ariel, we gotta go, you know, and she would just stir and wake up. Okay, Daddy, you know, just go pick her up. People shortchange themselves and don't say, oh, this is easy for you, you're a master, or you're an avatar, you're this, you're that. No, it's just people just don't recognize all the different abilities they have. They just go along, time to make the donuts. And I think we just keep living like Cro-Magnons. There's so many abilities. Everyone has heard the phrase that humans use about 4 to 5% of their brain's capacity. What do you think's in the other 95, 96? That stuff. We all have those abilities. Part of the reason people don't experience them is because they don't even think about it. They don't even try. They don't even try. I remember one time I was in a restaurant. It was Easter Sunday, and I took my family out to a restaurant, and my son was with me, and he was about maybe 10 or 12 at the time. And the restaurant was a huge restaurant. It was packed to the rafters. And he needed something at our table, and the waiters were running ragged, and service wasn't that great because they were overwhelmed and understaffed. If 1 or 2 servers don't show up, the restaurant is crippled. And so our server, was doing the best he could, but he wasn't around the table a lot. And my son needed something. I can't remember what it was. And he goes, Dad, the waiter won't come to the table, and I really need whatever. Let's call it a drink, or a refill on his water, I'll call it. Just for sake of the story. Doesn't matter what it was. And I said, well, Josh, send him a tractor beam. He goes, what's a tractor beam? I said, your third eye is right here. That's your power of telepathy. I said, so send the message from here to his third eye. And we looked, and our waiter was, easily 30, 40 feet away on the far side of the restaurant with his back to us. And I said, just look toward him, send a tractor beam, kindly, please, can you come? I really need another glass of water. I'm really thirsty. And he goes, oh, Dad, that's so lame. That's not going to work. I said, just do it. He goes, all right. So he looks at him, and he's sitting there, and the guy, the place was packed. And there were 8 to 12 tables between us and the server. And everyone's bustling and making noise and trying to flag down servers. And he sits there, and silently he sends a tractor beam to the waiter. Please, I need a glass of water. Silently. The second he did it, the waiter turned around, looked straight at him, 40 feet across the restaurant, walked right up to me, said, can I get you something? And he said, could I have a refill of water? I said, yeah, of course, right away. And he filled it up, and the waiter walks away, and he turns to me, my son turns to me, he goes, whoa, that is so cool. I said, see? I said, it's not that hard. People just take for granted abilities we all have. So, didn't Jesus himself say, greater works than these shall all ye do? I don't mean to equate that to a Jesus miracle, but the principle it can be equated. Absolutely. What Jesus was saying was, all that you see in me is your divine potential. The only difference is I'm living it and you're not yet. Partly because A, ignorance, you don't know, and B, lack of faith, you don't believe that what I'm saying is true. But people's opinion, the truth is not affected by people's opinions, nor by their beliefs. Truth simply is. And that is true. So, if the baby is near you, the baby will feel the comfort, the safety, the nurturing. So you can move the baby to the outside of the bed, still with appropriate protection so it won't fall off. And if you feel nervous about, rolling over, have the little divider thing. Or you could put the baby directly next to the bed. There are all kinds of things you could be doing. Daytime, nighttime. It's a piece of cake. I appreciate your question, and it's a really valid and legitimate question. My answer is it's really actually a piece of cake. It well and truly is. And then there'll be other times when, as the infant becomes a toddler, other kids may take the baby on the stroller and say, hey, honey, I have an hour break here. I could go on and on and on and on. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how easy it really is when you put God first. And everything works. It's a great axiom for life, not just for raising babies. All righty.